Very good evening. Thank you for joining us. You are watching Ebru Africa Primetime News. It is, of course, the 30th of July 2014. Let's take a look now at some of the stories coming up this hour.
In many circumstances, NGOs have been also accusing government of corruption or development partners as corruption, or even private sector.
The National Council of NGOs raises concern over misappropriation of funds by some of its members.
The cost of doing business in Kenya and our region will reduce sharply.
Under the annuity program of public-private partnerships, Kenya will have 2,000 kilometers of small roads completed within the 2014-2015 financial year.
And once we attain the requisite minimum 50 members.
Parliament debates the nomination of commissioners to the National Cohesion and Integration Commission.
Change bill.
Today is the World Day Against Human Trafficking, and we highlight a case of slavery in the Gulf which resulted in death. The National Council of NGOs has raised concern over the misappropriation of funds by some of its members. The Council says the organisation receives about 360 billion shillings from international donors, a large percentage of which they cannot account for. And as Brenda Zedder reports, the Council is carrying out an audit to establish whether donors have reduced their funding to the sector.
It was a meeting meant for celebrating 25 years of non-governmental organizations in Kenya. But that was not so, as members of the Non-Governmental Organizations Council were put on the spot of a misappropriation of funds and regular squabbles that have hindered NGOs from carrying out their mandate smoothly. Several NGOs in Kenya have been accused of misappropriating funds that are meant to develop the country. And to fight corruption in the sector, the government wants to limit foreign funding. But that did not go through, as the government suffered its major defeat in Parliament after a section of Jubilee allied MPs joined the opposition to vote against a bill limiting foreign funding of NGOs.
In many circumstances, NGOs have been also accusing government of corruption or development partners as corruption, or even private sector. But whereas if you go inside, the same NGOs are not clean either.
Former NGO Council Director Davis Njuguna claims NGOs receive 360 billion shillings from international donors who are mainly from the United States, Britain and China, money that can transform Kenya if there is transparency and accountability. Njuguna says that majority of Kenyans are still living in poverty despite the disbursement of the funds. Njuguna says that the NGO Council should fight corruption in various organizations by creating a dashboard that will show how funds are being used, arguing that without the tool, money will continue being misused.
Can you develop a dashboard? A dashboard that will capture the funds that come to this country. That if me, as the chair of my organization, has received funding from USAID, I don't fear somebody in Northeastern knowing I've received funds.
Speaking during the NGO Council Silver Jubilee celebrations at the KICC, the NGO Council Chief Executive Officer Levina Loyatam took the opportunity to downplay allegations that the two-day event will cost 100 million shillings. Loyatam claims there is a plot by a group of people to disrupt the event by sponsoring goons to cause mayhem and even block President Uhuru Kenyatta's motorcade tomorrow as he attends the meeting.
We categorically want to tell you that our budget for this particular event is 18,698,100 100, to be specific. The allegation of 102 million has come from individuals who are not happy with the progress of the council.
Letam has further refuted allegations that there are several NGOs who are closing and laying off staff due to lack of funds, saying that they have not yet received any notice of closure from the said NGOs.
So we are yet to get now the next research. We have International Policy Group here, headed by Fazul, who they are doing now the next research to be able to tell us if the donor funding has gone down. But as we are at this particular time, processes are going on well, they are moving on well. Apart from the allegations that we are hearing, we have not heard of any.
Members of the NGO Council have also been urged to work with the national and county governments in developing the country. Currently, there are at least 8,000 registered NGOs in Kenya. Well, non-governmental organizations are being urged to put the house in order so as to gain credibility from various quarters in the country. They've also been urged to ensure that there is transparency on how they use various funds that have been allocated to them. Brenda Zeda for Ebro Africa News in Nairobi.
The government will tarmac at least 2,000 kilometers of roads countrywide this financial year, and this is under the new annuity program. The Jubilee government intends to develop 10,000 kilometers of road by the end of its term in office.
The annuity program, a relatively new model in Kenya, will see the government partner with the private sector to develop infrastructure. Speaking during the Road Infrastructure Development Stakeholders Conference, President Uhuru Kenyatta assured that his government will use this model to deliver a better road network to Kenyans as promised in the Jubilee Manifesto.
Upon completion, our domestic and regional markets will be more accessible. By the same token, the cost of doing business in Kenya and our region will reduce sharply.
According to President Kenyatta, more roads will promote national integration and improve security. Under the project, 2,000 kilometers of small roads will be constructed by the end of this financial year.
This will be followed by a further 3,000 kilometers in the 2015-16 financial year. That again will be largely made up of 80% of small roads and 20% highways. My government is determined to spread these projects throughout the country.
The government will be directly involved in this program by negotiating for loans from banks and other financing institutions, while contractors will now be required to design, construct and maintain the roads.
Mambo ya kusema ati the design or putting too much quantities or less, now you lose. It is going to change very many things, and it is going to mean that there will be very many savings that will accrue to all of us, which means there will be more money to spend on roads, and there will be very many benefits.
Everybody is now going to carry their own cross. The contractor will, the engineers will, and so will government. In the past, the inefficiencies of a contractor or the failure of a contractor, the government ultimately carried by paying for that failure.
President Kenyatta also cautioned contractors against engaging in corruption. Akisa Wandera, Ebro Africa News, Nairobi.
The National Assembly has endorsed the nomination of 15 Kenyans as commissioners to the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. The names will now be submitted to the President, who will appoint 9 to serve in the cohesion body.
Claim to rise on that point of order.
Among those who made it to the list of nominees to the National Cohesion and Integration Commission is former Parliament Speaker Francis Ole Kaparo.
State clearly that I do strongly believe as the former Speaker of this House, Francis Xavier Ole Kaparo, will do a commendable job given a chance to serve this commission and this nation. Mr. Speaker, sir.
Mr. Speaker, having served as the Speaker of the National Assembly for 15 uninterrupted years, and this House is a mosaic of the Republic of Kenya in terms of race, ethnic, special interest, and having been the person in charge of this House, of that mosaic for 15 years, any Speaker of the National Assembly, anyone who has served as the Speaker of the National Assembly in this country really merit chairing of being a commissioner of this commission?
One of the situations that would bar one from becoming a member of this commission is if one is a member of the executive body or is actively involved in the affairs of a political party.
His nomination, alongside that of 14 others that was tabled in Parliament last week, sparked debate on how the selection was done, with MPs saying it was done late and probably not within the Constitution.
These positions of commissioners fell vacant so many months ago. Yet, the President should have declared the positions vacant within 7 days. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, now attempting to fill these positions at this time by recruiting new commissioners to this commission, I do not think we are following the provisions of this act.
We came to the conclusion that the process needs to continue in accordance with the law, because as it is, there were no commissioners in office. They had ceased to be in office for the last 9 months, and so there was nothing for the President to gazette that the offices are now vacant because their terms had lapsed a long time ago. So we are talking about a new commission as we speak right now, Mr. Speaker.
A section of MPs, though, had an issue with representation.
We have not seen people from the minority groups like Turkana. We have not seen any Turkana in this group. We have not seen the Edi Pokot. We have not seen any Okiek.
With the youngest of the nominee being 37 years old, the MPs felt the youth were not represented.
So it lacks when it comes to the issue of the youth. Might that they've done very well when it comes to the gender. And I think it will be a wonderful idea. There's a scientific research which has been done, and it has shown that women, when they're in leadership positions, there's a high probability of them performing better than men. And the fact that this committee is very, very critical, especially in this polarized political environment. It is my humble request we should have a lady to chair this committee.
The National Cohesion and Integration Commission largely deals with hate speech and serves as a watchdog over improper utterances by public figures and Kenyans in general. Reporting for Ebro Africa, I'm Sam Gakunyi.
Parliament has started debating a bill which seeks to create an authority to replace the National AIDS Control Council. If passed, the Kenya National AIDS Authority Bill by Awendo MP Jared Opio will give the new outfit powers to mobilize resources for the prevention, control and management of HIV/AIDS. The authority will be allocated funds by Parliament for its functions at the national level, while county assemblies will fund it at the county level.
Looking at how much are we giving as a country to HIV/AIDS is also a question that needs a reflection by us as a legislative arm of this government. The funding that we are receiving towards HIV is also quite low. And it is important that we have a kind of a fund where our own government also has an obligation to ensure that we have sustainable funding for HIV.
I think with this authority, we even need to think about how we are going to empower the constituency AIDS committees, because they are like moribund committees which do not even function. I have been to one or two in my constituency, and it's only a talking shop, nothing is happening, and I believe it's the same in all constituencies. So we need this authority in place and to empower the constituency AIDS committees so that we can get further in this war against HIV and AIDS.
The International Criminal Court may compel the Kenyan government to provide the property and financial records associated with President Uhuru Kenyatta to the prosecutor if it fails to fully cooperate. Now, the judges ruled that the prosecution's request met the requirements of the Rome Statute.
Although the ICC judges agreed that voluntary disclosure was welcome, they noted that other measures, including compulsory acquisition of the records, may be employed to obtain the required documents if the Kenyan government fails to fully cooperate. The ICC bench also directed that the prosecution pursue all possible avenues to attain President Kenyatta's telephone records. The revised request by the prosecution asked for 8 materials: information on companies of the accused, land and real property records of the accused, tax-related documents, bank statements, transaction records from the corporate entities of the accused, telephone records, and also information on the accused. The judges ruled that the request conforms with the requirements of relevance and the necessity for the purposes of a cooperation request. Of the items Bensouda had requested, she was only able to obtain the details of 4 vehicles that President Kenyatta owned or regularly used between 1st November 2007 and 1st April 2008. Now, these were obtained with the consent of the accused. The ruling comes in the climax of the controversial prosecution of Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta for crimes against humanity in the 2007-2008 post-election violence. A lot of questions have been raised on the capability of the prosecution to actually see the entire trial through. The court, however, in the midst of all the procedural frustrations that they have faced in attaining information pertaining to Kenyatta, remain committed in delivering justice for the accused and the victims of the post-election violence. For Ebro Africa TV, I'm Kamene Goro.
Well, now to some good news for any potential property buyers. The latest move by the central bank to introduce a new formula for banks to use in pricing loans has caused some excitement in the property sector. Mortgage experts say the steps being taken by the government may shift the investment equation back towards housing rather as a high return investment.
Thank you for joining us today for the quarter.
According to the Haas Index report and the mortgage report for the second quarter of 2014, the government-led initiatives to reduce interest rate margins in the banking sector are already having an impact. Although mortgage uptake remains far from comprehensive, the move towards a visible finance pricing is set to stimulate some interest in the mortgage industry.
At the core of the somewhat sullen housing market of the last 3 years has lain the country's high interest rates, carried on into the housing market after the surge and then the cuts in base rates of 2011 and 2012.
Banks are already cutting their rates, with the average mortgage rates across the country's top 15 mainstream lenders down to 15.7% from 17%. Between 2008 and 2011, Kenyan houses prices doubled while rents remained relatively steady. The trend since then of relatively stable house prices has been accompanied by sharp and steady increases. The improvement of returns is driving renewed and increased uptake in semi-detached houses, with the importance of buy-to-rent remaining evident, with the demand for detached houses being more subdued.
This brought the rental yields on newly purchased houses down from peaks of over 9% to below 6%. The trends since then of relatively stable house prices, accompanied by sharp and steady increases in rents, has seen yields climb steadily from late 2011 to now 7.77% for semi-detached houses, which have traditionally enjoyed the highest rental yields in the market.
The accompanying shift in the financial environment towards generally lower interest rates and real improvements in the best available mortgage rates see the market now in its best position for some years. But with the deterioration of the country's security situation, this could have a negative impact on the top end of the market, with Western budgets remaining constrained by the global downturn and overstretched public finances.
In the past several years, China has become exceptionally active in Africa, with a stream of high-level visits, large commitments of loan capital and extensive investment, while some see China as a strategic threat to Western countries' influence in Africa. Now, the dominance of China in Africa is a reality that the U.S. government is conscious of as they host Africa leaders for the U.S.-Africa Summit.
Since 2001, China's pursuit in the African continent has rapidly expanded in the economic arena, focusing on Africa's rich natural resources to fuel its domestic economic growth. China is supplying the much-needed infrastructure projects such as roads and bridges, enhancing intra-Africa trade, a move seen to undermine traditional Western influence in Africa. The upcoming US-Africa summit provides a platform for the US government to try and re-engage the continent.
It's a matter of United States attempting to reframe how they engage Africa in light of the fact that they have a new competitor, of course in the name of China, who has really been very visible.
Many experts note the competition between the US and China over Africa can be exploited for the benefit of the continent by harnessing the different comparative advantages of the two nations.
The competition between China and the United States in their quest to grab, if I may use that word, grab the African pie, there are 2 points to it. There's a positive point, which means that it gives African countries the leverage to negotiate and get what they want, because at least they are competing forces approaching them. But there's also a threat to it.
The engagement of African countries with either of the two giants is crucial in helping the continent integrate into the global economy. James Ishukwati, the director of Inter-Region Economic Network, urges African leaders to be strategic in their engagement with either of the countries.
When we talk about a continent, rich in mineral resources, rich in arable land, rich in population, we talk about over 1 billion people. The continent and the country has to have interests that surpass the daily needs of the people.
For Ebro Africa News, I'm Esbon Mogambe.
US President Barack Obama kicked up a major outreach to Africa on Monday by urging youth leaders to build a prosperous and self-reliant future for the continent built on civil rights and the rule of law. Speaking a week before almost all of Africa's leaders descend on Washington for a summit, Obama said the future stability of the world depends on progress on what is still termed the world's poorest continent.
Next week's meeting will attract 50 African leaders to Washington, almost all of them, apart from Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe, Sudan's Omar al-Bashir, and Eritrea's Isaias Afewerki. President Obama announced the summit in June last year during his first major tour of African countries, a rare foray for a president who has focused on Asia and the Middle East. The United States, still the world's largest economy, is only Africa's third largest trade partner after the European Union and China, which is hungry for the continent's natural resources. The International Monetary Fund forecasts that the economies of sub-Saharan African countries will grow at an average of 5.4% this year and 5.8% in the next year, faster than the global average. Many countries are growing from a low base, however, and others face population growth greater than their economic progress.
At least 15 people were killed in 2 attacks blamed on Boko Haram in northern Cameroon, with the wife of the country's deputy prime minister amongst a dozen other people reportedly kidnapped. The attacks came after Cameroon stepped up its fight against Boko Haram in the wake of international outcry over the kidnapping of more than 200 Nigerian schoolgirls on 14th of April.
The death toll from the 2 reportedly simultaneous raids on Sunday by the attackers on the palace of the Sultan Kolafata and the nearby home of one of the country's most senior politicians, Deputy Premier Amadou Ali, rose on Monday from 6 to at least 15. The Sultan Sey Bokor Lamai, his wife and their 5 children are among the hostages.
C'est une histoire très sérieuse parce que
This is really serious because when the political system itself is attacked, this is clearly a problem. We doubted it once. It's very serious. Because I think that if they had succeeded to abduct Amadou Ali, things would have been more complicated.
enlever le ministre Amadou Ali, que les choses auraient été plus compliquées.
2 gendarmes and a member of the Cameroonian Army Elite Rapid Intervention Battalion were among the dead. Boko Haram has long considered the northern Kolafata region close to the Nigerian border as a haven for its activities and as a route for smuggling weapons.
Boko Haram's attack in northern Cameroon causes us insomnia, especially in security matters. You know that security is priceless, but our authorities should know that we as the population trust them to stop this threat which causes a lot of terrors.
The dramatic raids follow the deaths of several Cameroonian soldiers and gendarmes killed in 2 attacks blamed on the militants last week.
In a new development to a complex probe into the air tragedy, France has said that the pilots of the Air Algérie passenger plane that crashed in Mali, killing all 118 people on board, had asked to turn back before all contact was lost in the night that was characterized by bad weather.
According to France Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius, reports that the crew asked to amend their route because of bad weather conditions emerged almost as soon as the tragedy came to light on Thursday, but the revelation that they subsequently asked to turn back is a new development. Speaking hours after the black box flight recorders of the McDonnell Douglas 83 jet arrived in Paris from Mali to help investigators, Fabius said air crash experts currently on the remote desert site of the accident were working in extremely difficult conditions. More than 20 French experts from the country's Bureau of Investigations and Analysis, which probes air accidents, as well as specialist police forces, were on site in Mali's Baren Gossi area where the plane came down. Investigators announced Monday evening that it had already extracted basic data from one black box, including the speed, altitude and trajectory of the plane, without detailing them. However, they said they were still busy recovering cockpit conversations from the other flight recorder, which had been damaged by the impact. Experts from Mali, Algeria and Spain were also helping to determine why the plane came down with such force that it completely disintegrated. Fabius added that investigators from the United States were also due to join them as McDonnell Douglas belongs to U.S. aviation giant Boeing. France bore the brunt of the tragedy with 54 of its nationals killed in the crash of flight AH-5017, which had taken off from Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso, bound for Algiers.
It is now time for a short commercial break. Don't go too far, still to come. Israel violates international law by shelling a UN school in Gaza, killing 16 people. And thousands of visitors swarm to the South Mexican town of Oaxaca. We'll tell you why.